Let's talk about The Old Guard, Netflix original movie, rated R, 2 hours and 5 minutes, action adventure fantasy, released on July 10th. Synopsis is a covert team of immortal mercenaries are suddenly exposed and must now fight to keep their identity a secret just as an unexpected new member is discovered. Ooh. Directed by Gina Prince-Bythewood, who directed Love and Basketball and episodes of The Bernie Mac Show and Everybody Hates Chris. Written by Greg Rucka, also wrote the graphic novel that this is based on. Charlize Theron is the lead character. She plays Andy, or AKA Andromache of Scythia. That should give you a hint as to where we're going with this. It goes without saying, Charlize is like an action star. Atomic Blonde, Mad Max Fury Road. KiKi Layne as Nile Freeman, a former U.S. Marine who served in Afghanistan. She's been in Captive State, Native Son, If Beale Street Could Talk, and the upcoming Coming to America. I'm not completely sold on her. I don't know what it is. There's just something I'm not fully on board with her. She and Charlize Theron had a pretty good fight in the airplane towards the beginning of the movie. That was pretty cool. Netflix spared no expense with these special effects. I'll tell you that much, because when she breaks her arm and then you see her arm healing and the bone going back into the arm, I was like, that is pretty cool. But there was one moment where it was very reminiscent of, like, she and Charlize Theron kind of do that handshake from Predator when Schwarzenegger meets up with Carl Weathers, and they do that, like, which has become a meme that's gone so viral, and I love it every time I see it. But it's just like them doing the shake, the grip, where they're like flexing the fuck out of their biceps and their arms, and that we kind of got like a little bit of, like, the female version of that when Charlize Theron and KiKi Layne did it. I was like, I don't know if that was intentional homage, but I appreciate it. If you haven't seen the movie yet, good action sequences, great character development, kind of put a nice little twist on the action genre in that we got to know the characters. The characters were humanized. It kind of checked all the boxes in terms of being, I don't want to say woke, but being inclusive. And Matthias Schoenaerts, I don't know how to fucking pronounce that, as Booker, or Sebastian Livre. He was in Red Sparrow. I completely don't remember who he was in Red Sparrow. Marwan Kenzari as Joe, or Yusuf Al-Kaysani, a Muslim warrior, and Nicky's lover. This is the guy who was in Ben-Hur, What Happened to Monday, but he was also Jafar in Aladdin. And I was not fond of Jafar in Aladdin. And I don't know, maybe I was a little too harsh on that performance, because Marwan does a pretty bang up job in this one. Luca Marinelli as Nicky, or Niccolò de Genova. He and Joe started off as enemies and become lovers. Chiwetel, I don't know how to say this. Chiwetel Ejiofor. Yeah, I'm white. What do you want me to do? As James Copley, a former CIA agent grieving the loss of his wife. Chiwetel, he was Scar in Lion King. Has been in the Doctor Strange movies and was in 12 Years a Slave. He's the lead in 12 Years a Slave. But here's another villain from the new batch of live action remakes of Disney movies that I didn't think worked. So the new Jafar in Aladdin and the new Aladdin, I was like, eh. And the new Scar and the new Lion King, I was like, eh. It's funny that they were both in the same movie together. It's like, hey, what are the villains that Neal doesn't fully like? Let's put them in this movie. Harry Melling as Steven Merrick, a greedy CEO of a pharmaceutical empire, who I guess played Dudley Dursley in the Harry Potter movies. I never watched it. I watched the first Harry Potter movie, and that was it. But I believe this character is modeled after that dude who, like, I don't know, what the hell was his name? Kind of young farmer bro who was like super into Wu-Tang. He like price gouged or something. He raised the price of like EpiPens to an astronomical rate or something like that. Got in big time trouble. Veronica Ngo as Quinn, who the actress was in Bright, the new Spike Lee joint, The Five Bloods, Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. They go into a little sequence about, her place in history. And I was like, when I saw that, I was like, I wonder if she'll come into play later on. And we'll talk about spoilers in a little bit. I'm excited to see what happens with her. Steven Merrick guy, which it sounds like Merck, which I believe Merck is a pharmaceutical company, monster pharmaceutical company, and Dr. Mita Kozak. I mean, and this is what they say makes for a good villain. It's a villain who is relentless in their ways, great ambition, passionate about getting their way, but feels that their intentions are good because it benefits humanity. And that's what makes for a good villain. And I'm not going to say that this guy was a good villain, but both he and the doctor, they want to develop something that will ultimately help extend people's lives, not reformat the brain, but will help prevent Alzheimer's and dementia and stuff. So it's like, pretty good intentions, just the way they go about doing it and accomplishing that feat is like pretty sinister, y'all. The critics' consensus, the old guard is occasionally restricted by genre conventions, but director Gina Prince-Bythewood brings a sophisticated vision to the superhero genre and some knockout action sequences led by Charlize Theron. 81% of critics gave it a favorable review with an average rating of 6.52 out of 10. 72% of the audience gave it a favorable review with an average rating of 3.76 out of 5. I would put it in that range. Probably closer to 72. I don't know. There were some times where I don't do this normally. My wife does. I don't. But I'm in it to win it. I'm invested in a movie. I put my phone down, face down, and I watch a movie from start to finish. And it's very rare that I will ever go to my phone during a movie. Can't remember that I never when it's a movie I want to watch and I've rented it or it's premiering or debuting on Netflix. I've never gone to my phone. I went to my phone once or twice in the first half of this movie because it was just like, it's just not clicking for me just yet. But I wasn't alone in streaming it. It was the top streamed, they said item. I don't know why they said item. I guess the top streamed program on Netflix over its first weekend. So I guess that when they say item, it must mean like all programs, like TV shows and movies included, all genres. And then on July 17th, this past Friday, Netflix reported the film was on pace to be viewed by 72 million households over its first 4 weeks. And it's among the top 10 most successful original launches in the platform's history. Oh my goodness. And Netflix also revealed it's one of the most watched original films by number of viewers in its first 4 weeks. Guess what's at number 1? And I brushed over it, I glossed over it, and I didn't give a full review because I thought, it's just another action movie. How many people honestly watched it? It's probably on par with blah, 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 blah. Number 1, Extraction, 99 million viewers. Now, it's important to qualify this because they said that number of viewers who watched at least 2 minutes, which is incredible considering a lot of these movies are like 2 hours plus. So as long as you watch 2 minutes of it, that counts as towards this number. Doesn't necessarily mean, take it for what it's worth. I mean, 99 million people tuned into Extraction for at least 2 minutes. It takes 30 seconds of a YouTube video to count as a view. Apparently it only takes 2 minutes for people to count for Netflix. Number 2 is Bird Box at 89 million. Spencer Confidential at 85 million, which I have not watched that yet. And I've had friends say I should watch it for shits and gigs, and I probably should. I had a little bit of Mark Wahlberg, a little bit of Post Malone. I heard Elijah Schlesinger's in it. Maybe I'll give it a shot. Number 4 is Six Underground, which I reviewed with Ryan Reynolds, 83 million viewers. Number 5 is Murder Mystery at 73 million. And I can understand why, because that shit was everywhere for like a good month. No matter what the hell you watched, that was always like the next movie's suggested title. The Irishman, surprisingly, at number 6. I would have thought The Irishman would have been in the top 3, to be honest. TBH. Triple Frontier at 63 million. So I like Triple Frontier a lot. I like the soundtrack. I like the cast. Pretty much liked the plot, the cast. It's all good. Interesting to see that it's behind Spencer Confidential. Spencer Confidential really fucking crushed it. Jesus. And then The Wrong Missy at 59 million. So that's the one with David Spade and Lauren. No. But it actually looks kind of funny. Almost watched it. I think my sister watched it and she said she loved it. So I might have to give that a shot. But so, judging by those numbers and by the numbers I just gave you, Old Guard would fall right below Murder Mystery and above The Irishman, which is saying something. because like I just ran down the cast. Other than Charlize Theron, not a lot of big names. Chiwetel Ejiofor is a face that a very recognizable face, kind of like one of that guys. So what do the critics have to say? This is a story of a group of tired superhero soldiers going through the motions of saving humankind with an increasing level of frustration and quiet anxiety. Charlize Theron turns out to be oldest, even though we don't really find out in the movie just how old she is. Joe and Nicky, the lovers. Joe was a Muslim warrior fighting on the Muslim side of things in the Crusades. Nicky was fighting on the side of the Christians in the Crusades. Started off as enemies and became lovers. Joe and Nicky, the Crusades, I don't know when they were, but they were a long time ago, thousands of years ago. And like their love is still burning strong. I mean, is that like the strongest relationship in human history? Possibly. Name another duo. You can't. That kind of thing. Like, holy shit, dude. I'm entering year 8. Is it 8 or 7 of my relationship? And I'm looking forward to hopefully another 50 years. But hot damn, thousands of years? You guys still burning bright? More power to you. Holy crap. Booker, like I gave it away, but Booker was fighting under Napoleon, so he's like thousands of years old. Or is he hundreds of years old? Where am I getting thousands from? Crusades would be almost, hundreds. Yeah, hundreds of years old. And of course Booker gives that very impassioned speech. Each character kind of had their moment in the sun. You had, we'll go over what the top critics said, and then we'll get into that. But frustration, anxiety, you see that coming through with Charlize Theron, mostly through Charlize Theron. She basically wants to quit on the world, especially after that they got ambushed. She's just like, I don't want to do this anymore because I don't think that we're making a difference. There's more evil and bad in the world now more than ever, and I don't know that we're just shoveling shit against the tide. She didn't say that, I'm paraphrasing, but that was one of my mom's favorite expressions, shoveling shit against the tide. She feels like, well, what's the point of this anymore? Like, what good are we doing? And then you find out towards the end, butterfly effect, motherfucker. One critic said, if sequels are made with the same equal mix of character-based narrative and kick-ass action, then the old guard could represent the next franchise to become excited about. Yeah, I guess I could buy that. I mean, they said that the writer of the graphic novels, he did 4 installments of the graphic novel. So there's potentially, you could be looking at 4 of these movies, but I don't know. It seems a bit excessive. Second one is already in the Netflix's pipeline with signed contracts by the main characters. So yeah, we're definitely going to get a second one, that's for sure, especially given the ending. So I guess I can talk about it now. That ending set up a sequel very nicely. So, basically the story of Quinn, there was like a interesting vibe there. They were kind of, her and Charlize Theron, Andy and Quinn, like fought side by side and they seemed super close. And I know, I'm this whatever cisgender straight normie. Is that how you're supposed to say it? But I got closer than friends vibe from those two. So there's potentially something else going on there. But you see them through the years, and they were tried as witches and burned alive, and they just couldn't be killed. And so they ended up separating them and putting, Quinn in an iron coffin and throwing her off the side of a boat somewhere into the ocean. And that's that is a fate worse than death, because she would drown, come back to life, drown, come back to life, drown. And she's been apparently doing that for 500 plus years. So the catch here is that they're not really immortal. At some point, all that dying and coming back to life catches up with them. And so that's kind of the major obstacle facing Charlize Theron throughout it all is, at some point your time is up. And they showed that's what happened with that dude Lycan. I guess that was part of their crew. Eventually, it's just one day, it's like the wounds wouldn't heal. And so that eventually is going to happen to Charlize Theron. You got the sense that it might happen in this installment, and then it's a little happy ending. But Quinn, they were like, well, I mean, if she just, is drowning and waking up every minute for 500 years, I mean, she's got to be dead by now, right? Right? Wrong. She shows up at the end. That was a nice little Nick Fury at the end of Iron Man type thing. It's a post-credit scene that gave me a little bit of the goosebumps. Yeah, I'm all in on the sequel. the whole time, like Nile is trying to figure out how old Andy is, and Andy refuses to tell her. But Charlize Theron has stated that Andy is over 6,000 years old. The Scythians were nomadic tribes from modern day Eastern Europe around Ukraine to southern Russia. They are what is now known as southern Russia. They lived 2,600 to 2,300 years ago. So Andy is at least 2,300 years old. Andy calls herself Andromache of Scythia. Scythians are known to have existed from about the 7th century BC up until the 3rd century BC. Yeah, 6,000 years old. All the shit she's seen, that's got to be kind of cool. I know she's probably tired, but it's got to be kind of cool. When Andy gives Nile her own phone back, the lock screen's date lists Sunday, April 21st. Now, this is a nice little bit of trivia. This is like you were like got a Hawkeye for that kind of shit. There are two assumptions that about the time of the movie. Either it takes place in 2019 or in the slight future when the next occurrence of April 21st is on a Sunday, which will be 2024, followed by 2030. Yeah, there wasn't like a whole lot to indicate that it wasn't 2019 and then it was 2024, 2030. I think if it was 2024 or 2030, I don't know, you would get the sense that it was, I didn't get the sense that it was that far, that it was in the future, or that there was something that would indicate that it was not 2019. So I would accept 2024. 2030, I would not accept. I'm sorry. I would need to see a little bit more out of the future, even though it's fucking 10 years from now. Good God. The monologue Joe delivers about Nicky not being his boyfriend. That was, yeah, I mean, like I said, there were a couple of scenes where each character had their moment, right? So for Joe and Nicky, but mostly Joe, it was when they've been captured and they're in the back of the van with all those soldiers, cops, whatever you want to call them, SWAT team. One of the soldiers says something about, what is Nicky, your boyfriend? And then Joe goes into this very impassioned speech about everything they've been through for thousands of years. And so he's like, no, he's not my boyfriend. He is my all. And it was just a very romantic little monologue speech. And of course then they kiss, and the soldiers are they're like stunned by the emotions that poured forth from Joe and just how much passion he was able to deliver. But then it's like the hetero in them like kind of they like whipped them back into reality, and they like pulled them apart. I thought that was a nice little touch. But this is what I'm kind of referring to when I say checking all the boxes. You know, the fact that they have a Muslim and a Christian in a homosexual relationship. They have a female as the boss. They check all the boxes in terms of like trying to be diverse and inclusive. So I think that's where it separated itself from other action movies, is that it was willing to explore, those elements. So Booker, and this is obviously something that they had to address, was like, what about your loved ones? What about your family? And like, how does this work? He gives an impassioned speech to Nile. Not a speech per se, but he kind of reveals a lot about his backstory and how like he had to watch his loved ones die. And one of his boys, his youngest, his oldest, I forget what, put the onus and the blame squarely on him. Like, hey, you have this power, you have this ability to heal. Can you just give me this power? Can you just give me this ability to heal? And he's like, it doesn't work that way. I'm sorry. Like, I wish I could, but I can't. So then you see the son, like, I guess had cancer or something like that, just lashing out at him. It's something you got to deal with. Seeing all this death and knowing that you can't, or you're not going to die for a long, long time. I can see why it would cause you to be cynical, skeptical, bitter, jaded. You would just become desensitized. So it's to me, it's super impressive that Charlize Theron has gone 6,000 years, and just now she's like, I don't know if I should be doing this anymore. It's like that whole thing, like, from Lethal Weapon, like, I'm getting too old for this shit. It's like, you are definitely too old for this shit. You've seen the worst of the worst, and yet you're still plugging away. So kudos to you. Chiwetel Ejiofor, Huda. I'm gonna call him Chiji Copley. I'll just call him by the character's name. It probably works as well. Copley. Yeah. So you find out Copley's wife ended up passing from ALS. And so this is his modus operandi, his impetus is like, finding out why, this crew of superhumans, I guess you could say, the secret to the sauce. And so that he can prevent others from losing their loved ones like he had to lose his. So again, good intentions, makes for a good villain, thinks what they're doing is right and will benefit humanity. he sold them down the river to the pharmaceutical guy, but he's also compiled one hell of a cork board with all kinds of red yarn that would make Charlie Day from Always Sunny jealous or proud, connecting all these seemingly unrelated events. This team of soldiers has saved over the years, over the decades, centuries, whatever. They save one person, and it's like they think, that's it. We saved one person, whatever. But this Copley dude is tracing it, and he's saying, hey, if this person died, they don't aren't able to procreate, or they aren't able to have this person, this son or daughter, who then has a son or daughter, who then cures diabetes, or, whatever it is, cures polio, or who invents this thing that benefits humanity, or who has done a greater good for the human race. Without you saving that person's life, then down the road, that doesn't happen. So who knows what the timeline looks like? Who knows what the landscape looks like if you don't save that particular person? So there is a point. You are doing good, and what your actions do mean something. And so, it speaks to everyone, really. If you think about it, it's super relatable, because it's like a lot of times you're like, what's the point? Why am I doing what I'm doing? What's the key to life? And what kind of legacy am I leaving? What's the impact? And then you realize, well, something that you've done in your past that you don't think about possibly affected someone's day to the point where it changed their path or their route, or their arc. And maybe they go on to do something great just because of that little interaction that you had, or something little that you did for them. And you'll never know about it. It's something to think about. And it's hard not to compare this to Atomic Blonde. I would say Atomic Blonde had cooler action sequences. Maybe I'm misremembering, but I do think that Atomic Blonde had some pretty badass action sequences. Charlize was more of a badass in Atomic Blonde, or at least more alluring in Atomic Blonde than she was here. Here in this character, Andy, is I get it. She's 6,000 years old, and it's like she's weathered and beaten down and unsure of if she wants to continue. But Atomic Blonde was just so rife with, like, just pulsing with, I don't know, it was just erratic. Oh boy. Horny much? Another critic said this one never loses sight of the human part of Superhuman. Pretty good synopsis. Another critic said, even with its drawbacks, the old guard weaves some new ideas into a familiar genre and is worth taking a flyer on the action movie lovers. Yeah. And it didn't feel like people were, just like, here's the tech guy, and here's the weapons guy, and here's the brainiac, and it's like everyone had a story. I'm of the mind that the sequel will be better than the first. I have that much confidence in the sequel. I think you got a sense of its potential in the first one. It was like, this is good, but it's going to get better, which is rare.